Okay.
Well, let's turn our attention to other stories now.
Yes.
The Supreme Court on Tuesday dismissed the appeal filed by James Faleke and 4 others challenging the election of Yahaya Bello as governor of Kogi State.
Justice Kudirat Kekerekun, who read the lead judgment, held that the appeals lacked merit and was subsequently dismissed. She added that the reason for the dismissal would be given on Friday, the 30th of September.
The courtroom was filled to capacity, with all interested parties duly represented in the court, anxiously waiting for the outcome of the Supreme Court judgment. While taking their argument, counsel to James Faleke, Wale Olanipekun, urged the court to allow his appeal. He added that the election was not declared inconclusive due to the death of Audu, but because there were malpractices. Olanipekun also urged the court to invoke Section 187 of the Constitution and to also hold that the election had been duly concluded, as at the time Audu died. He also wanted Faleke declared winner, having run with Audu, who had scored the highest number of votes. Counsels to INEC and Yahaya Bello, on the other hand, urged the court to dismiss the appeal on the ground that no one can claim to be the winner, since Form EC8A had not been issued to anyone. They added that Faleke's matter was a pre-election matter, as his result had not been announced. They further added that he cannot lay claim to the governorship seat, as it's only INEC that can declare the winner of an election. After the short judgment, the counsel to the governor and INEC hailed the judgment.
We say in the words of Shakespeare, all is well that ends well. This matter has come to an end, and we are waiting for their reasons on the 30th of September.
It's been the position of INEC. We said that they were right in the decision they took, and that we have been vindicated at the tribunal, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. That was the right thing to do in the circumstance of this matter, and I think it was right.
And today, the Supreme Court has put, a final stamp of authority on the judgments we had, both at the tribunal and at the Court of Appeal, confirming the election of Governor Yahaya Bello as the governor of Kogi State. You see, it was a tough battle, and when you get to the last level, and you find the highest court of land pronouncing in your favor, what do you have left rather than to be happy and celebrate that victory?
This case threw up a lot of novel issues because the scenario is an unprecedented one in the constitutional history of Nigeria, and we are happy that this matter came as far as this.
Everyone is anxiously waiting for the reasons why the appeal was dismissed by the Apex Court.
All right, joining us from our Abuja studio is a constitutional lawyer, Edwin Inegadu. Good morning to you and thanks for joining us. I wonder what your take would be on the Supreme Court judgment that's not in favor of Faleke, James Faleke, the running mate of the late Audu Abubakar in the governorship election of Kogi State last year.
Good morning. My position, as well as my outlook to the issues before now, has been that, one, the Supreme Court has resolved the issue once and for all. And there's really not much anybody's views or opinion can really impact on that decision. But from my own perspective, in as much as the Supreme Court has not given the reasons for the decision itself, one would have to be very circumspect as one approaches it. But from my own personal view and opinion, I do believe that that position is absolutely correct from my own perspective. Now, why I said this is particularly with respect to Faleke. Going through the facts and the issues as it arose from the very onset, I have believed that Faleke is simply holding to his straw from the very onset, because there was not really much in his favor as regards the facts and the circumstances that would have made him governor of Kogi State as at the time he laid that claim to that seat. That is my view on it.
All right. If we take certainly the verdict has been passed. When we look into the issue of precedences, because these form basis to which other cases can stand upon. What is the precedence here? Because we know that there are issues of inconclusive election in parts of the country, and we may still be having this as we get along.
Well, the angle I want to look at it from is this: can a candidate for an election be declared a winner even when the election has been declared inconclusive at the point? I think that's one of the angles we need to look at it clearly from, because now I think what really threw up the whole entirety of these issues is not even about the death of Abubakar Audu, but the fact that the results themselves were not declared at that point, and the INEC at that time said that the result was that the election itself was inconclusive, which means that there was a need for a supplementary election. But before the supplementary election took place, James Faleke has already declared that he is not going to be part of the supplementary procedure or proceedings, because as at the time Audu died, he should, or they should have been declared winners, which is one of the aspects I don't agree with. Because what he's simply asking the court to do at that point was to be declared winner based on an inconclusive election, based on a result that has not been announced by INEC, and formally again based on results that INEC has not confirmed or deemed concluded at that point in time.
Supreme Court judgment on Kogi governorship election. It's time to bring you the news updates. Ikechukwu Obienu is standing by. Over to you now, Ikechukwu.
Thanks, Ngozi. Here is the update. The House of Representatives on Wednesday had a rowdy session over moves to suspend the former chairman, House Committee on Appropriation, Abdulmumuni Jubrain. This followed a motion on matters of privilege raised by the chairman, Rules and Business Committee, Emmanuel Okejev. Okejev described Jubrain's assertions as acts of misconduct against the House as an institution. He wants the Committee on Ethics and Privileges to investigate the matter and report back in 1 week. If found culpable, Jubrain, we understand, will be suspended for a period not less than 6 months. And in a swift reaction to the recommendation by the House of Representatives, Jubrain says that he will not appear before the Ethics Committee unless the proceedings are made public. This was contained in a statement he posted on his Twitter handle on Wednesday. The statement read, "The House belongs to Nigerians, not the 360 members. Despite all these, and since I can substantiate the allegations raised with cogency, I will take up the opportunity provided by the Ethics Committee to state my case on the condition that the proceedings are made public." Jubrain also accused the House leadership of trying to cover up the allegations of budget fraud and corruption. In other stories, the Senate has commenced debate on the current economic recession that the country is going through. Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu and Senator Dino Melaye advised President Muhammadu Buhari to reshuffle his cabinet by either sacking incompetent ministers or move them to other ministries where they could perform better, while Ekweremadu urged the president to move the ministers of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, and Budget and Planning, Udoma, to other ministries where they could be more productive. Senator Melaye called for an outright sack. It's no longer business as usual for pipeline vandals. The Nigerian police force has arrested 19 of them in Lagos and recovered a total of 19 tanker trucks loaded with PMS. Public Relations Officer of the Anti-Vandalism Task Force told newsmen that the suspected vandals have attacked several riverine villages and killed innocent people in recent times. It said the IGP's task force on pipelines vandalism, working on intelligence, trailed and arrested the suspects. Now, the Borno State government is on the move to fast-track the reconstruction as well as rehabilitation and resettlement efforts in Bama community. The state governor, Kashim Shettima, has moved into the destroyed community to see that the speedy work takes effect. It is a motivation for stakeholders to effectively confront the challenge in reconstructing infrastructure destroyed by the insurgents in 2014. Well, that's the update. Back to you, Mike and Ngozi.
All right, Ike, thank you for the updates there.
All right, you're welcome back. While the news update was going on, Mike and I were trying to make sense of this Supreme Court judgment, and trust me, we're not able to really come up with anything tangible. But, you know, we're not the lawyers here. We have our guest right there in our Abuja studio. He's a constitutional lawyer, Edwin in Negadu. Yes, Edwin, well, you seem to be on the same page with the Supreme Court, but we've been wondering, here, about the precedents that this would set on one hand. But I'm wondering again, what exactly are the factors you think may have advised the Supreme Court judges in coming up with this decision to actually favor, Yahya Bello?
Like I said initially, whether I agree with the Supreme Court or not, it's the final decision, and my views will not change that. But looking at the issues as they have been thrown up from the very onset, Faleke had, from the very onset, been a running mate to Audu Abubakar. He was not at any point in time. Presented as a gubernatorial candidate. Now, something happened which was beyond the knowledge, the power of every of the parties, which was the death of Audu eventually. Now, I do not really think that because Audu died and the election at that point was declared inconclusive, that on its own clothes Faleke with the capacity or the powers to be declared winner of that election at that particular point in time. I've consistently asked this question. At the time the elections were declared inconclusive, was he a gubernatorial candidate or a running mate at that point? He was a running mate, and he still remained a running mate at that point in time. And I do think it would be a dangerous precedent, because if the state at which he wants to be declared the governor is simply a state which we call inchoate. So, an inconclusive process cannot throw up a candidate who has not completed the procedure. Now, if we go to the case of Boni Haruna and, let me say the case of Boni Haruna in 1999, Atiku Abubakar was declared the winner of that election, and he was returned as governor-elect before he was elevated to the position of the vice presidency of the country. So it's a totally different issue. The elections was concluded at that point, and the Constitution is very express to the fact that if after the election or a governor dies or he resigns or something happens which he can no longer continue with the office, then the deputy governor-elect comes in. But in these circumstances, we do not have a governor-elect at that point. We do not have a deputy governor declared at that point. So for me personally, I thought it was just a folly trying to cash in on the circumstances and asking the court to be declared the winner of an election that was declared inconclusive at that point in time.
All right, Edwin,
now,
let's
further from there.
Yes.
After the elections were declared.
Yeah, Edwin, let's see from the Constitution itself, because there seems to be a vacuum, or the Constitution being silent when it comes to before the declaration of the candidate at that, as it were. Now, that is where you just mentioned now that James Faleke is trying to cash in, or all of them are trying to cash in on that to see what interpretation that can bring. But when you bring it to the Constitution does not make any specification. Do you think that the Constitution should be reviewed in that light so that it can be categorical? that and in case this happens again in the future sometime.
Or even the electoral law.
While I do believe that laws developed from factual issues and circumstances which the people face, but I also do not think that you can predict every circumstance or situation that might happen for you to capture them effectively in your corpus, in your body of laws. Now, what could be done at most is, as it happens, going forward, these things need to be reviewed and updated constitutionally, and even in our substantive laws bordering on election matters. Now, but having said that too, on the flip side of it is that the Supreme Court decision, I believe that by the time we'll get a full reason for the decision, these issues will be covered appropriately, to be discussed and analyzed very well, so that going forward, once it gets to the court, it becomes a precedent for the fact that if it happens at this stage, the votes cast goes to the political party and not to the individual. That was simply affirming the position in Amechi and INEC, which was decided some years back. But having said this too, it is necessary for these laws to be reviewed once in a while, particularly before elections, to take care of things, of circumstances that may arise without anybody's foresight or foreknowledge of. So I think it's in the right direction for the framers of our law to equally sit down and look at these circumstances.
All right, let me take you up on the point you made earlier, that the vote is actually for the party and not necessarily the individual. Now, let's even look at this scenario, okay, that's played out, living out the death of, of a running mate. Let's assume, you had a James Faleke and you had maybe somebody else, or even, Audu Abakar, unfortunately, he lost, he died. But let's assume that, it wasn't that kind of extreme situation. The two gentlemen are put forward, to be elected, to be voted for. And since the party is the one who is voted for at the end of the day, does the party retain the right to withdraw the candidate, the party's candidate, and replace him with somebody else? Will this still fly?
If I get you right, the question seems to be whether the party on its own can decide to withdraw a candidate at that stage.
Yes.
Well, from the laws, a party cannot do that, because you present candidates, or you can make any form of substitution. It's about 60 days to the date of the election itself. That was one of the issues that actually came up in this Kogi State issue as well too. Because some people's position, like the PDP, is the fact that you can no longer substitute a candidate at that stage. But the party on its own, it was partly what the reasons of what happened in Amechi and INEC as well. Because Amechi was substituted after that window had closed. It was the basis for that, for the litigation as at that time. Now, if the party decides to withdraw a candidate at that point, in all honesty, the party cannot. If it does that, it will amount to shooting itself in the foot, because why the present Kogi State issue took the turn it went was because the death of Audu was a natural thing. It was not an act of the party. It was not an act of the opposition. It was not an act of INEC. That was why the positions were novel. But if the party on its own decides to withdraw its own candidate, that's at its own peril. Because clearly the law is very express that you cannot withdraw 60 days to the election. So if the party decides to do that, that is a totally different scenario, totally different laws apply, and totally different happenstance. There are a lot of precedents to cover that already. So we don't even need to bother ourselves much on that. To amount to shooting itself in the foot.
All right, Edwin, we'll come back to you on this. Let's bring in Foladele now to give us reaction of Nigerians on...
Mike,
good morning.
Good morning, Edwin. Wow, this is a big story. More than a big story, this is a huge one. And, well, almost a year and about 4 unsuccessful appeals later, we finally have a decision.
Yes.
Let's see how some people are reacting to this. First tweet here from Adamu Fatima, who's saying, the judgment by the Supreme Court on Kogi state elections speaks volumes on our so-called fight against corruption. Next one from Maxwell Adele, who's saying, in fairness to all, a fresh election should have been pronounced by the apex court, and I'm sure that's one thing you might want to discuss with Edwin. At Olokedeji, who's saying, with his victory now, I think he'll start to do the right thing for the people of Kogi. Next one from Dele Mejabi, who's saying, the Kogi's verdict has further proven that there is expedient need for our constitution review and enactment of law in Nigeria. And I heard Mike talking about the constitution earlier. Next one from Jawizi, there is never any courage after fear. Good night, my heartbroken brothers and sisters from Kogi State of Nigeria. And the last one here from SQ Milan, victory is always from God. God bless Bello, Kogi and Nigeria at large. So I guess he's pleased.
The Nigerians always like the issue of God and everything.
Bless.
God takes control.
Well, Americans too. God bless America.
Yeah, God bless.
It's not just us. I mean, we are religious, but
yes, we are.
Exactly.
But I do want to ask you. Edwin. Do you think that, what do you make of the fact that a decision has already been reached, but we have to wait another week to, find out the reason why? What do you make of this?
If Edwin got that question from yes, go ahead with your response. Go ahead.
The question very well. The point about it is that the Supreme Court has that powers and capacity to arrive at a decision and then come out with the fuller reasons later. So it's nothing unusual. It's the only court in the land that has that that powers to do that. Now, the way it plays out is the panel sits down to discuss what position they think it's appropriate in the circumstances, and they give their reasons, but there might not be enough time for them to put the full reasons on ground. All they do about it is just to take the notes and then develop those reasons and then bring out the fuller reasons. So we'll wait for 30th, and I believe as it stands that the reasons are already on ground, but they need to harmonize it before coming out with it. So there's really nothing unusual about that.
Okay. All right, Fola.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you,
Mike.
Thank you as always. Okay, let me pick on one or two comments on the tweets. Should a fresh election have been called by the court? Would that really have solved the problem in such a way that all parties will be satisfied at the end of the day?
Well, in all respect, that was the thinking of most of us when the whole conundrum came up. We personally, I was of the view that a new election will have resolved some of these issues. But at that point too, you cannot but agree to that APC had garnered enough votes at that point too that they are holding on to. They don't want to throw it away at that point. Some people said. And which is rightfully correct as well too, that do you wish away the votes the party has already secured at that point? For the PDP candidate at that point, the handwriting were clearly on the wall that with the supplementary, even if you collate, put all APC needs to score in the supplementary election was just about 5 votes, and they'll be declared winners. So. A lot of us, I even believe that, even from the feelers I got then, even from INEC, that the proper thing will have been cancel the entire process, call for a fresh elections, and let us take it from there. But the parties...
We seem to have distortion from the audio there. But if you see the reaction of Nigerians to the case in the case of Kogi State, you see that when it comes to understanding the Constitution, what it specifies when these things are, not many Nigerians, except those who are lawyers, are able to really put their hands or place their hands to say, this is what's supposed to be, and so on, because of the silence and the vagueness of the specifications of the Constitution
and the electoral law on
sometimes.
this. And a more, worrisome trend for some, observers too, is that the democratic process, the whole electoral system, seems to now be in the hands of the courts and not the electorate themselves. Yahya Bello said the Supreme Court judgment is victory for democracy, that the democracy has been honored in Nigeria. But is that really the case? Because at the end of the day, it really should be the voter who decides who should govern them or not.
But if you see from that window,
find a trend where consistently the courts have had to step in to decide who should govern and who should not.
But if you see from that window, the people had taken their decision by casting their vote. That is where their powers end. Then the institutions will take it from there when there is a conflict between the decisions taken by the voters. So, and that is where the Supreme Court, or the INEC on one hand, and then the Tribunal, Appeal Court, and the Supreme Court comes in. Because there is where your powers end, there is where the other takes precedence from.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what happened in here. But however way it goes, the Supreme Court is final when it comes to decisions and verdict on these issues, and we are glad whether we're not happy. We are glad it doesn't matter. But
and
the
it's
point
good
is,
to hear from James Faleke that he has no regrets.
Yeah.
He went to the very, top of the legal system to, get his right. But it's all right. What is important now is for governance to actually happen in Kogi State.
All right, let's thank Edwin Inegedu for joining us on TVC Breakfast, even though we had distortion towards the end part of the discussion in there. But we thank you for joining us on the program.